Whether you're team tank or team here for the vibes, I think it's safe to assume we all agree that the Flames have some work to do.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jessica Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Today, I'm here with more predictions because last offseason, I went into things thinking that the Sharks were going to be better than the Flames. The Flames were just going to fizzle out, no pun intended, before the season even really got started. And everything that happened last season was quite honestly the exact opposite of what I predicted. So maybe I just need to continue that because who knows? I'm a little superstitious, but we're going to talk about my predictions for this year's record, the trade deadline, and what happens with the Flames' backup goaltending situation now that Dan Vladar is gone. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. We are rolling with 3 episodes a week now as we get through the off season. Make sure you're subscribed and find us on your favorite podcast platforms, as well as YouTube. So, I really don't want to be negative. I think there is a lot of negativity in the Flames sphere right now. I think that a lot of people are, kind of, I don't want to say argumentative, but I understand why people are team tank and I understand why people are team, just go for it. But I am personally here for, I hope the Flames do some sort of rebuild, but I understand that management and ownership have very different visions and an idea of what this team actually is in the grand scheme of things. So I'm trying to look at this based off of last season. Last season, the Flames finished just outside of a playoff spot. They hung on until the very, very end, thanks to Dustin Wolf. Dustin Wolf, in my humble opinion, should have been the Calder Trophy winner. He carried the Flames to the very end. Now, we all know about the sophomore slump. And is this something that Wolf is going to face? I think that it's number one, goaltending is something that is so unpredictable. Based off of Dustin Wolf's past performances throughout his entire hockey career, yeah, I would expect this season to be a good season. But he never played a full NHL season prior to last year. So his workload is different. The lifestyle is different. And we've seen it with all good goaltenders. They all go through a slump and figure themselves out eventually. So if Dustin Wolf starts the season off, with a little setback, or if he has a setback at all next season, I wouldn't be surprised. No offense, but considering the pylons that are playing in front of him, I'm shocked that he had the season he did. So I'd like to see it again. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know what the odds of that happening are. And, I think we all know that offense is a significant problem, and that is probably the biggest barrier for the Flames when it comes to being a playoff team, but also just winning regular season games. You are hoping that Sharangovich has a bounce back year. You're hoping that you get another 20, 25 goals out of Jonathan Huberdeau. Nazem Kadri is going to be 35 years old. Can you expect a 50-plus point season from him? Michael Backlund is 37 years old and entering the final year of his contract. What are we getting out of him? He suffered a lot of injuries last season. Is it likely that we see them as the bookends, as your top center and your fourth line center throughout the season? We know that Connor Zary is going to re-sign with the Flames, but can he stay healthy? And that's not a knock on him. It's not like he's cliff diving and getting injured doing that, or, risky behavior. It's in-game stuff. Can he have a little more, I hate saying self-awareness because it's not his fault. Neither of those injuries were necessarily his fault, especially not the collision with Rantanen. But can he stay healthy? Will he avoid the injury bug again? Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee. Oh, it kind of feels like the elephant in the room. I think that they are good additions to the locker room, but I need to see more on the ice. They both admitted the midseason trade took a toll on them, and it was a little bit of an adjustment period. They didn't have time to settle in, and by the time they felt settled, the season was over. So what can we get out of a full season of them? I want to see more, because quite honestly, it would feel like the trade was a mistake because of how many players you have waiting in the wings. Is that bold? I feel like that might be a little bit too bold. I don't know. But Zane Parekh deserves a shot at the NHL. If you are trading Rasmus Anderson, which all signs point to that happening, Zane Parekh should be in your NHL lineup come opening night. I think that he is a player that you need to throw to the wolves. You can shelter him, of course, but I feel like in order for him to truly get his footing and get comfortable out there, you have to do this. And I don't know if all of the stars are going to align for the Flames to be better than they were last season. Because again, you're doing a lot of hoping. It's not like you can go out there and say, okay, yeah, we know we're going to get, 30 plus goals from this guy because he's done it consecutively for 4 seasons. We know that our defense is going to be, the top 5 in the league. So you don't have consistency and you don't have much to show for what you're hoping for. I have yet to see the Flames do anything this offseason that leads me to believe they will be better this upcoming season. And coming up next, we're going to talk about the trade deadline because I feel like it's going to be very, very underwhelming. Have you ever decided at the last minute you want to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's a game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It is the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets simple and fast. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I will be using the Game Time app when I head down to Yankee Stadium in just a couple weeks here, and I am very excited. Game Time has not let me down when it comes to fantastic deals and, of course, unbeatable prices and great seats that I know that are, good to go before I even get there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks everyone for tuning into today's episode of Locked On Flames and making the show part of your off season. I hope you are all doing well and doing what you can to make it through this summer. It has been a very long summer. And we have a long time until the trade deadline. This one kind of hurts to say because it is not what I want. I feel like normally like my predictions come from a place of examining the team and what they did last year or even the year before. But in this case, you can't really look at the season before last because of the pending UFA situation. So based on the inactivity that we saw at last year's trade deadline and kind of leading up to it, I don't think the Flames are going to do anything at the deadline. Whether they are in a playoff spot, super close to a playoff spot, or have secured themselves a draft lottery spot. Why? Because they have too many players with no movement or no trade clauses that are the attractive pieces that contending teams might want to add. Nazem Kadri. I know that there have been discussions about, he'll waive for this team in this team, but it's like these two teams for right now. I don't know if there's any truth to the reports of him waiving for Montreal, but Toronto, I could completely, see and understand. However, Toronto does not have the assets that the Flames want or need. Blake Coleman. He has a 10-team approved list that he would go to. Would he consider a different team, depending on the circumstances of that point in the season? You can always ask a player to waive, but that does not mean they're going to. They do not have to. You, as an employer, gave them that right, that clause in their contract, which they earned. So, why would they do it if they don't have to? They don't feel like it's necessary. Now, I think back to a few years ago with Jacob Markstrom, who kind of told the team, hey, like, I'll waive my no movement or no trade clause. And then it kind of crumbled in the Flames' faces because they didn't, like, everything was good to go. And then for whatever reason, the trade never went through at that time. I could see a world where a player like Blake Coleman requests a trade. I can see a world where Michael Backlund requests a trade. I definitely see a world where, like, Coleman requests a trade more than I see that with Backlund. But I do see that being a possibility. I'm sure Miramonov is open to being traded. I'm sure, maybe Joel Hanley, once again, he's on a 2-year deal at this age. If the Flames, 2-year deal, not a 2-way deal, a 2-year deal. If the Flames kind of find themselves in a situation where he could go to a contender, they could orchestrate that. I can see a world where maybe Martin Pospisil gets traded. Like, there are players that are attractive for depth or really for a great ad for contenders, but it comes down to the players. Like Martin Pospisil, you can send anywhere, it doesn't matter. But your Coleman, your Kadri, you're not trading Huberdeau, but like he's up there. Like there are just a number, like Mackenzie Weegar. I don't think that you're trading Mackenzie Weegar, but like Rasmus Anderson, that's partially the reason why this trade has not happened yet, because of his no trade clause, as well as the team's not giving, the proper assets if he's not agreeing to extend. So there is a world where the Flames should be sellers, but they can't be because of clauses. And there's a world where, maybe they are buyers, but there's nowhere for like these players to go on this roster, because we've talked about it ad nauseum since this season ended. There is a logjam. The Flames have too many wingers. They have a lot of defensemen and players that I think, they're really going to be weeding out their prospect pool too. And, it's tough because you want everyone to get a fair shot, and you obviously don't want to pass over anyone. But I would much rather see a younger player in the lineup over Miramanov or Jake Bean, who, like, both of them are just not good defensemen. And if that meant, Kuznetsov or Solo getting third or second pair minutes, like I'm game for that, because I see them in the longer term plan than either of them. So ultimately, I think it's a do nothing trade deadline. And I feel like their hand will be forced. Or you're going to run into a situation where like Blake Coleman requests a trade. And I wouldn't blame him. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the backup goaltender situation, because honestly, the Flames have a lot to figure out, even with limited roster spots. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're following me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto. Over free agency, or once free agency opened, Dan Vladar signed with the Philadelphia Flyers, which congratulations to him. It's likely that he will be the starting goaltender there. So that is very exciting. He's worked hard for it. And then the Flames did sign Ivan Prosvetov, who was a Russian goaltender who did play with the Colorado Avalanche a few seasons ago. And of course, they have Devin Cooley, who they signed last year in free agency, who was pretty solid for the Wranglers. Both of them have some work cut out for them. I think that really that second goaltending, like that backup goalie spot, is open. It is open season. I don't really know. I don't think that the team has made up their mind when it comes to who has that spot. Now, I'm pretty sure both of them have to clear waivers in order to, be sent back down to the AHL. So that's why I think picking the right backup goaltender out of the gate is going to be very important, because you don't want to have to be playing this back and forth game. And like I mentioned, you don't have Vladar anymore. You knew what you were getting most of the time. with Vladar. You don't know what either of these two can do in front of, or I guess behind the team that you're like behind your current roster. And that's why you have to figure it out. So I really wouldn't be shocked if at some point it is a more rotating system, at least to start the season. I don't think that the Flames will carry 3 goaltenders, but I do feel like at like the first sign of things going south, after like maybe 3 starts, we do see a change. But ultimately, Dustin Wolf can't be expected to pull a Jacob Markstrom and play 60-plus games a season. It is unrealistic. He will be burnt out by the time he's 28 years old. And you don't want that. You don't want that. So what do? Well, you should continue, obviously, with Dustin Wolf as your starter. That is a no-brainer. Now, camp, it's really, really going to come down to if Prosvetov or Cooley has the better camp. And again, it's open season on that spot. I mentioned earlier that, Dustin Wolf's kind of poised for a setback, but he doesn't. He handles like every typical roadblock very well. So I can't sit here and be like, it's a sophomore season. History shows the sophomore slump. Like, yes, but it's Dustin Wolf, who is not human. I think that really your only certainty this season is that Dustin Wolf is your starter, as well as Kadri being your top line center to start the season. I'm hopeful that the Flames will be a little more strategic with their goaltending, but I'm also fine if they just, let the backup goaltender just kind of float, because I'm not saying I'm team tank, but I don't see this team as a playoff team. So if they want to make the most of that situation and get a decent draft pick and a very good draft class, well, the opportunity will be presenting itself in like 6 weeks. So it would just be interesting to see. And that'll do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have had a fantastic week. Thinking of everyone that, needs a little extra love and support today. It has been a grueling summer and some not so great news coming out of multiple facets of life. I'm rooting for you. I hope that, Lisa's podcast can take you away from your daily funk or whatever you're going through at any time. But that'll do it for me here on today's episode. And I will see you all tomorrow where, hopefully we're talking about a Connor Zary extension or maybe Rasmus Anderson trade. But at this point, not too hopeful.